bridges are symbolic of a rite of passage or maybe a connection. I try to think of that each day, how I'm building bridges instead of walls. And in a cognitive sense, maybe new neuroplastic connections between different ideas to create a more integrated map of what I'm really doing here and what my purpose is. Viktor Frankl's Search for Meaning was a fantastic book. His logotherapy is based on using a sense of purpose to propel you forward. Right now, we've just had our first snow. I'm hoping that black ice is not what propels me forward, but we shall see. I had a few thoughts this morning I wanted to share. Thoughts about the mind, and how our impression of the world plays a role in our personal development and business success. So some things are like riding a bicycle. You learn it and then you're kind of naturally in the flow and you can do it without much effort, and because of that, it seems natural to you. There are other things which take much longer to learn. Maybe language is one of these, although for a child, language can be picked up much quicker. Maybe something like a sense of morality is something that could take decades to really establish and maintain. So this got me thinking about David Hume's Missing Shade of Blue. David Hume was an empiricist. His basic mission was to create a science of the mind like Newton had created the science of the physical world. He wanted to be able to explain and predict the way we think and how those thoughts hold bearing on our subsequent actions. His main piece is called The Treatise. I believe he wrote it by the time he was 24. It's a very dense book, which is, so pretty amazing feat. I think he continued to revise it, and scholars say he, maybe took away from it. So one of those first thought, best thought incidents. We second guess ourselves. But there's some truth, I think, in that flash of insight we receive. I think for David Hume, it was when he was 18, and he wanted to carry that idea through to be this project of the Treatise of the Mind. His Missing Shade of Blue theory is really interesting and something I railed against in school. The idea being, if there was a missing shade of blue, you wouldn't notice. And I liken this to music. If you're playing a music scale, of course, if a note was missing, you would feel that was gone, or something to that effect. But in another sense, we take someone like Emanuel Swedenborg, for instance, who was drawing on more of an intuitive cache of information. Swedenborg says things like, in the next heavenly realm, they have colors that we don't have. I think this speaks to David Hume's Missing Shade of Blue, that we don't know what's missing because we don't know what it is. I mean, it seems maybe like circle logic, but at the same time, it's profound, because there's a lot that we think that we know, and there's a lot we think we don't know, but there's not a lot, if anything, that we don't know, we don't know. Hume's philosophy is often applied for more or less a scientific calculation of what is true. So not so much in a cause and effect sense, but in the sense of maybe what we can know, certain knowledge. So I wanted to talk about how philosophy is important and dangerous for maybe this main reason, in that it seeks certain knowledge. And philosophy claims that more than any other, discipline, it alone can attain this certain knowledge. You take something like physics, for example. It's more playing with math and theories than it is finding the answer for here and now. Instead, we want a theorem that applies to everything, anywhere, within reason. There's a range of conditions in which this applies, meaning it's not concrete knowledge. It's this basic guideline, and then there are basic guidelines within that guideline. Then there are paradoxes when you get too far in on a molecular level, too far out on a cosmic level. So those physical laws aren't really laws at all. They're behaviors that change on every level. So I think philosophy does have limitations. Obviously, science has problems. So what are we left with? I think the real uncharted territory is the study of the mind, and there have been attempts and psychoanalysts and theorists on how this all works. But applying Hume's missing shade of blue, I'm thinking about memory. So how many times do we have to fail or make a mistake before we learn or remember the right way to do things? So Swedenborg talks about how humans don't really have this innate knowledge like animals do. Other philosophers like Mencius think we do have these moral seeds innately that are then cultivated and blossom and then reseeded in others on higher levels of dimensionality in order to become a more full and bright and loving person. Very rose-tinted concept. I think it's possible that it's somewhere in the middle, and the middle means that we're drawing this wisdom not from a calculation based on information, but on something bigger in a different sphere of understanding altogether, which one might, call like heaven or the divine. The problem is when you stake the claim that it all occurs in the self. That's where the physics break down. That these moral seeds, this innate knowledge, is in a separate self. So all science, all philosophy is built on this separate self. And things get dicey in the whole, well, how can we understand anything? People debate that, you have this knowledge or you don't have this knowledge, in the sense that you don't have this innate knowledge. The concept is, along with, Aristotle's ideas, that everything's based on sense experience. So you have to experience something in order to understand. I think there's got to be truth in both of them. And I think the bridge is this other dimension of understanding, which is the great beyond, that the seeds are veiled by the world that we live in, which has limitations. Our understanding in this realm is conditional. But you take something like love or forgiveness, social scientists want to say that we're programmable, but at the same time, I think we have these experiences like love at first sight. We have this experience of fraternal love that seemingly comes out of nowhere, and we want to pursue it. So what is that? We have this sense of purpose that maybe is based on a flickering of an experience or an echo of what someone else has said, and it just kind of taps us on the shoulder until we learn to go in the right direction. So children, I've read, sometimes it takes them anywhere from 200 to 2,000 times of being corrected before they learn what they're supposed to do. I would apply this to adults as well. Maybe probably we're more pig-headed. Let's say it takes us 20,000 times to learn to not be greedy or to put our employees first, because our, I guess you could say, lower or more animalistic, selfish impulses get the better of us. So you could really approach this problem from a scientific or philosophical standpoint. You could approach it from a spiritual or religious standpoint. But what I think is the most effective standpoint you can take is to draw your actions from something is bigger than you.